Joe, a businessman, awakens in an unfamiliar room with a mysterious mill, and a haze of amnesia bewilders him. He grapples with the absence of his phone, the towering walls, and a securely locked door that compounds his anxiety. Desperation drives him to shout for assistance, but an authoritative voice from an air vent instructs silence. This enigmatic voice gradually reveals that Joe is drugged and warns of impending melancholy in the days to come, hinting at an enigmatic challenge before resuming work. His futile attempts to scale the walls deepen his despair, but the distant sound of a whistle and sustenance sliding through the door slot kindle a glimmer of hope. However, his desperate pleas for aid, emphasizing his pregnant wife's predicament, are met with cruelty, the slot slamming shut and his hand injured. Nightfall sees Joe improvising a makeshift bandage from his tie and consuming the provided sustenance. A sudden light on the wall reveals an AI voice that introduces Joe to advanced career training. The AI offers no further information, leaving a cryptic logo behind. Joe's neighbor informs him that the machine is working as intended, but to the detriment of employees, with the numbers on the wall counting down to a mysterious event at midnight. Joe's questions are silenced by fellow workers yearning for sleep, but his neighbor reveals the truth. The voices are former employees, a consequence of angering their former employer, Mallard. Midnight brings unsettling sounds hinting at a grim termination process, while the AI voice tries to paint it as a positive journey. The next day, the guard warns Joe about keeping his cell immaculate and reveals a foul-smelling waste disposal hole. Joe finds a human skull on the floor, and the neighbor confirms previous employee deaths. Joe learns about a hidden clause in their contracts granting the company unchecked power, leading to a shocking realization. Suddenly, the AI initiates a conversation with Joe. Frustration festers within him as he demands fair treatment after a decade of service. His impassioned outburst triggers an alarm that promptly silences him, and the AI formally announces the initiation of his advanced career training seminar. Joe's situation is straightforward. A recent drop in his productivity and excessive personal time usage has impacted his department's performance. This new job aims to reignite his productivity. His workday runs from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., granting him free time outside those hours. Joe's job entails turning a mill, earning a point per full rotation, and a daily quota of 50 points is expected, with punishment for falling short. The lowest scorer, even if they meet the quota, faces termination. Joe's pleas to go home, citing his pregnant wife's need for him, fall on deaf ears. The company remains indifferent. Escape isn't an option. The neighbor's advice is clear. Concentrate on working and surviving in this relentless environment. Joe grapples with the challenges posed by the mill's aging and rusty equipment as he begins his labor. Completing the initial task demands substantial effort, and the AI punctuates his achievement with an advertisement. Throughout the scorching day, Joe toils relentlessly under the blazing sun, his sustenance meager and drowned out by the AI's ceaseless advertising. Nightfall brings the unsettling sound of another worker's termination, masked by additional ads. Over breakfast, Joe converses with his neighbor, questioning the purpose of daily quotas when termination always looms as a threat. He sees them as punitive for falling short. His neighbor explains Mallard's unwavering standards, emphasizing that good enough doesn't suffice. When Joe shares his previous day's achievement of 100, his neighbor advises caution, as others may seek to surpass him. Joe is urged to work diligently to survive without setting an impossibly high standard, lest surpassing expectations becomes the new norm. As Joe embarks on his daily quota, thoughts of his wife, Kate, occupy his mind. He fondly recalls the day he secured a house for their new life, a generous gift from his company. Although Kate had reservations about its size and cost, Joe assured her it was the fruit of his labor. Their story takes a turn when the next day, Kate reminds Joe to take time off for a baby-related appointment, posing a challenge to his work-centric mindset. She expresses concern about balancing work and family once the baby arrives, cutting their conversation short when she senses something amiss. Fast forward to the present, Joe completes his workday, meeting a quota of 150. Suddenly, a knock at the door startles him. After a moment of apprehension, a guard instructs Joe to undress, leading him into a corridor where he's drenched with water, given a brief moment with soap, and promptly sent back. Joe's daily grind at the mill continues, with the unrelenting sun sapping his energy. Occasionally he converses with his neighbor, who reveals the mill's purpose, keeping them busy pointlessly. The scorching heat adds to their misery, and Joe's water supply diminishes rapidly. When he seeks more, his neighbor discloses a harsh reality. They receive only the minimum sustenance required for survival. To get more, they resort to a grim solution, urinating in bottles, hiding them, and filtering the liquid through shoe insoles. Joe finds it disgusting and firmly refuses, despite his neighbor's suggestion that Mallard is testing their endurance. Joe persists in his work, haunted by thoughts of Kate. He remembers a day when Kate worried about mounting hospital bills and his promise to work harder. Kate wanted to share the burden, but Joe discouraged her from working during her pregnancy due to the risks. She emphasized that their home was at stake if she couldn't contribute too. Mallard had long pledged Joe a promotion, a promise left unfulfilled, casting doubt on their sincerity in Kate's eyes. After an exhausting day's work, Joe collapses, miraculously hitting a quota of 370. Catching his breath, he spots Alex carved into the mill's handle, prompting a query to his neighbor. It turns out Alex was the only one to escape this ordeal. The next day, a personalized pen commemorates Joe's achievement, but his triumph is short-lived as his daily quota skyrockets to an unattainable 370, the new norm. Enraged, he hurls the pen and berates the company. Returning to work, he realizes he no longer earns a point for each revolution, only an X on the clock. The neighbor sheds light on the meaning of the ominous X. It signifies a penalty, doubling the number of revolutions required to earn a point. Subsequent X will compound the burden further, fourfold, eightfold, and so on. With no alternative, Joe musters his determination to meet the daunting 740 revolution quota. Joe's determination weakens as exhaustion takes its toll. When his neighbor learns of Joe's daunting new task, he becomes enraged, fearing Joe's struggle endangers them all. In this tense moment, the AI steps in, announcing the end of the workday and Joe's failure to meet the daily quota. Seizing the opportunity, Joe questions the penalty. The AI, unfeeling, attributes it to Joe's perceived failure to support his co-workers, insisting he requires motivation. In a startling turn of events, Kate's profile appears on the wall as the AI threatens to conscript her into this oppressive environment. Desperate, Joe pleads for forgiveness and pledges to meet the new quota the following day to spare Kate from a grim fate. The AI accepts Joe's promise, assuring him that the penalty will be lifted upon success the next day. In an unusual twist, it introduces an extra challenge, a menacing red light above. Amid relentless midnight screams and the piercing red glow, Joe struggles to sleep. The following day, he wraps his jacket around the mill handle to ease the strain on his hands, working relentlessly beneath the oppressive red glare. It's a torment that nearly shatters his sanity. He even begins to hallucinate, a distorted version of himself mocking his belief in hard work for salvation. Yet, thoughts of Kate and their impending child ignite newfound determination. With a burst of resolve, Joe miraculously meets the quota just a second before time's up. The AI announces the penalty's removal, and the red light vanishes, ending Joe's ordeal. The following morning, the AI surprises Joe with a brief video of Kate and their newborn at the hospital, bringing tears to his eyes as he becomes a father. Amidst the joy, the painful realization of the time he's lost in confinement sinks in. Later, Joe confides in his neighbor, driven by the desire to learn about Alex's escape. Initially hesitant, the neighbor empathizes with Joe's longing to be with his baby and decides to share the secret. He directs Joe to examine a poorly patched section of the wall behind the pillar, hinting that it was a previous escape route. Joe eagerly grabs the pen, using it to uncover the shoddy patchwork, realizing the company's cost-cutting extends even to their repairs. Joe persists for days, unwavering in his determination. He meets his daily mill quota, using his supposed free time to carve an escape hole. Eventually, it's large enough for him to slip through. He enters a dark expanse, but the guard quickly catches and knocks him out. When Joe awakens, he's back in the mill room with the hole filled. The AI scolds him and raises the quota to a punishing 1,000 points. The neighbor suffers a broken leg from the guard. Joe tries to apologize, but the neighbor, in pain and frustration, reveals the entire facility is controlled by algorithms, leaving them powerless. The neighbor, a former IT worker who designed the system, expresses regret, saying it's useless to reason with the AI. Joe suggests they all follow the computer's rules and stop working to avoid harm. The neighbor thinks it's risky, but Joe points out they have little to lose. Joe boldly climbs the mill and gives a passionate speech, saying hard work is pointless here, and not working is the way to survive. Other employees join in, refusing to work. At day's end, the AI announces it will terminate those without points. Panic sets in, and the employees, ignoring Joe, rush to work, determined to defy the AI. Surprisingly, the neighbor praises Joe as a good father and shares a secret. To meet his baby, he must escape. With few options, Joe resumes his tough work at the mill. At night, the neighbor, whose real name is Alex, admits he escaped before, but was caught again. He'd hidden this, hoping for a second chance. Joe says goodbye, heavy-hearted, as the guard takes Alex away. The next morning, the AI extends another incentive, a brief video featuring Kate with their now walking baby. The realization of lost months fills Joe with anguish, prompting him to unleash his fury at the company for robbing him of everything, his colorful language expressing his deep frustration. Enraged by Joe's outburst, the AI orders his termination. A group enters, ignoring his pleas. The guard, contemplating Joe's impact on his home, provokes a fight. Blood spills, shocking onlookers. Surprisingly, the AI declares the guard's failure, offering Joe a promotion. Joe, refusing manipulation, quits. He awakens in an office, realizing it was all a career training simulation, surrounded by fellow employees in a similar situation. A colleague, resembling the guard, reveals Joe willingly joined a program. Despite the long ordeal, it lasted just 60 minutes, implying his son wasn't yet born. Joe's level 8 stagnation wasn't incompetence, but a lack of challenge. The experiment boosted his productivity and leadership, promoting him to level 9. After disconnecting, Joe enters a small office with a kinder AI. Contending with vivid PTSD from the simulations, the small, stifling office feels confining. Confronted with a non-disclosure agreement for the secretive project, Joe signs it for his wife's sake. He reaches out to Kate, and the emotional conversation ends with a vow to bring the company to its knees.